Does Monday at the office feel like a storm? Not with Microsoft Copilot. That feeling when Copilot gets everyone up to speed instantly? It's sunny again. When Copilot simplifies complex data so your teams can act, that sun's shining on a beach. And when Copilot uncovers hidden insights, you're on that beach with your people, and you find buried treasure. That's Microsoft Copilot. Learn more at Microsoft.com/AI for all.
Today on CityCast Boise, Hey Boise newsletter editor Blake Hunter is with me to break down the stories of the week. We're talking luxury housing, open primaries, and how we're navigating Treefort Music Fest. It's Friday, March 22nd. I'm Lindsay Van Allen, and this is what Boise's talking about. Well, good morning, Blake. How are you doing after a few days of Treefort?
I'm doing well. As listeners may be able to tell from the sound of my voice, I have had a couple cigarettes. I've had a couple late nights, but we've had fun. Had some great shows so far. And so, excited for a couple more days this weekend. Yeah,
it's really been fantastic. This is my first Treefort, and I'm having a great time. I am yelling a lot, so same.
Yeah.
I'm really fighting for my voice today, so.
We had a good time at Fly on a Bus. It's funny because, we met through this job. Obviously, I've followed you on TikTok for a long time, but we met through this job. And so, the two of us at Fly on a Bus with, some other friends was, one of the first times we've actually hung out in the same physical space. But I think that's perfect, honestly. We had such a good time.
I know, it was. It was a great time to get to know you and get to know somebody at a concert for, 100%. A group we both really enjoy. And their energy was amazing. Even today, still, I'm oh, that absolutely blew me away.
I know. I'm sorry to say, obviously I'll still be going, but I'm did Treefort peak on Wednesday night? It was the warmest it's going to be the whole festival. The sun was out. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
It's good to have a fun time early so that then the rest of your festival, you're not waiting around for a good time.
Yeah, hoping for the best. I was kind of thinking the same thing. The bar was set so high on Wednesday. So We'll see. I'm really excited about the rest of the weekend. But man, that was an incredible start to Treefort.
Yeah, it was great. It was great.
Okay, well, I wanted to jump in with a segment that I would like to call, Look, More Luxury Housing. And there's potentially a new condominium complex that's going to be built near Catherine Albertson Park. And this isn't the first time that there's been some discussion and controversy about this particular development. Right, Blake?
Yes. So I've always been curious about this little parcel of land. So we're talking about this technically vacant section of land. It's about 7.5 acres, I believe. And it's just north of Catherine Albertson's Park, which if you're thinking to yourself, it's on the river, it is. So it's called the Trappers Island complex. So there's this little canal called Settlers Canal, and between it and the river, there's this blank slate of area, this slate of land, that kind of goes over to the red kind of iconic red truss bridge. And so it's that area over there. There's a couple businesses there. It's by Americana Terrace. So that's just kind of the general area that we're talking about. And it's actually been empty for quite a while. And it's funny because I remember I used to bike that route going to Boise State. And because I used to live out in Winstead area. And my first day of biking to Boise State, my first class back in 2018, I was biking on that exact area, and a deer crossed the road and crossed the Greenbelt in front of me. And there's a ton of wildlife in that little area. So that's kind of where we're talking about. Back in 2007, though, this company actually decided that they wanted to build something there, proposed these condos, but it was 2007, and so the Great Recession kind of put it on hold. And then they visited it again, and in the late 2010s. And if you're familiar with this area, you know that up on the hill there are some folks by the name of Albertsons who have a bunch of these huge houses up on the edge of the Boise Bench. I mean, just super prime real estate. Houses, right? They've got these huge views, big heritage family vibes up there. And so actually these condos were proposed several years ago, and back in the late 2010s, and they took the city to court saying that they didn't want their views to be obstructed by these new buildings.
Oh, their views and their panoramic views.
Their precious, yes, exactly. And so then there's a bunch of back and forth over like, okay, well, Albertsons, like the heirs only wanted it to be, the buildings to only be allowed to be 45 feet tall. And then the developers said, well, we want it to be 83 feet tall. And so there's kind of this back and forth.
Okay.
Planning and Zoning Commission like weighed in and like nobody's happy with it. However, the developers knew at that time the new zoning code was being rewritten and it was kind of being marketed to voters. And so the developers knew that this new zoning code was going to be coming online, at least, within like 5 or so years. And so then they just decided to wait it out and to see what was going to happen with the new zoning code. And lo and behold, the land was rezoned, which from an area that allowed buildings up to 45 feet high unless there's an exception. And so now it's been rezoned as mixed use zoning area, which allows buildings to be up to 70 feet high. And it makes it much, much more difficult for someone like the Albertsons even to be able to kind of challenge that. So that's where the situation is now, is that they've re-proposed this development and are hoping to kind of be able to get it through without that kind of legal challenge.
Do you know, have they submitted an application yet or really started moving forward with the process at all?
No official application yet, to my knowledge. Actually, they're supposed to be meeting this week with developers through planning and zoning. And this is mostly based off of Idaho Statesman reporting. They have a really good article out on it. But then you can kind of find the actual like plots and whatnot if you're really into the nitty gritty of it, which is fun. We've been talking about the Arthur building downtown and kind of what luxury buildings mean right now in a city that needs affordable housing so badly. And so we're going to keep talking about that. You had your first interview with Mayor McLean just this week. And so that's going to be coming out next week on Wednesday. So people can hear that. And we, of course, talked to her about housing, as you must. And one of the things that she mentioned was like, just remember that like these luxury apartments and condos aren't the only thing that are being built right now. Like they're kind of the most highly visible. They're in the most like prime real estate, being downtown or like right on the Greenbelt and parks and whatnot. But she was like, there's other projects too, which is certainly true. I mean, like Franklin and Orchard she mentioned, Arthur and State she mentioned. So yeah, they're not the only buildings that are going up, but they're certainly the most visible.
Yes, and the ones that seem to be reported the most by the news and that seem to stir up the most discussion.
Yeah, which certainly, I mean, we're part of that. We keep talking about Arthur because I can't let it go because it's just in my line of sight. But it is also, I mean, it's hard not to look at a building like Arthur or look at these condos that like, the developer has said, like, these are for empty nesters. These are for people who want like a super urban lifestyle that can afford to pay something like this. And it's hard not to just see that and be like, okay, but we have other priorities as well. But, it's all about balancing those.
Yeah. And they, like we've talked about in some different episodes, there's definitely a balance where there are the people looking for that more luxury experience, or that's what they can afford, or, the lifestyle that they are looking to have in Boise. Yeah. And when they have those apartments, then they aren't renting apartments that maybe a more middle class or people with less resources need to have access to. So
exactly,
that can also be a benefit. But yeah, like you said, sometimes it is hard when we see all of these really luxurious buildings going up, and we also see the population that doesn't have homes or that is struggling to maintain some kind of a living situation with a permanent roof over their head. And it does sometimes feel a little like, it's not as balanced as I would hope it would be.
No, 100%. And you have to be able to, like, two things can be true. You have to be able to hold both of these things. Like, this is how capitalism works. Like, this is how a market works.
Yeah.
And so it automatically by design leaves some people out. And it's about, like how we want to catch people who can't be helped or haven't been able to be helped by within the market system. We have to be able to figure out how to work that too. And so I just hope that everyone who's literally invested in big projects like that are also equally or more so invested in helping people who don't have housing.
Exactly, because they're all part of our community, and we have a diverse and economically diverse community. And I want all people in Boise to feel like they belong in Boise, whether they can afford the luxury apartment or are just really struggling to pay rent every single month.
Shipping can make or break a sale, so optimize how you ship your orders with ShipStation. They make it easy to automate and manage orders no matter how big your business grows. And they might even be able to help reduce shipping and warehouse costs. So optimize and keep up your momentum for growth with ShipStation. Sign up for your free 60-day trial now at ShipStation.com and use the code POD. That's ShipStation.com with the code POD.
Okay, Blake, I wanted to jump into a different segment where we're going to talk about the Open Primaries initiative. And it's getting closer to the deadline for the Idahoans for Open Primaries to submit the signatures that they have. How close are they to getting enough signatures?
Yeah, it is getting close. They actually do have the total number that they need right now. So you need 63,000 signatures in Idaho to get a petition right now. And that particularly means the kind of bigger hurdle, I guess, is that you have to have 6% of the registered voters in every legislative district, or in 18 of the 35 legislative districts sign on. So you don't have to have 6% of all of Idahoans sign on, but you do need to. Basically, the idea, this was written up so that you have to have a broad swath of the state. So you can't just go to Boise and get 63,000 signatures in Boise, which if you tried really hard, maybe you could do for something like this. But the idea is like, we want to know what people in every county think. Like we're going to Benoit, we're going to Owyhee. So like the idea is that you have to have 6% of 18 of the 35, so a majority, just over a majority, to sign on. And so they currently have 17 of 18 districts covered. And then there are 3 districts in the Magic Valley and Eastern Idaho that are like literally within like 250 votes, or signatures, sorry. So they're actually very, very close. They're not going to stop collecting signatures right now. So if anyone's interested in signing the petition and hasn't, go for it, because they want to make sure that they have, well over the margin. They don't want to cut anything close here because some signatures can't be validated. Like there's just at risk of things kind of going wrong. And another important to mention is that, the Idaho Supreme Court has actually already had to weigh in on this ballot initiative. Yeah, because Attorney General Raul Labrador, as the Attorney General of the state, he has some power over what the titles of the ballot initiatives are. And he wrote ones that the folks behind this initiative, the Idahoans for Open Primaries Coalition, were not happy with. They said that it was kind of misdirected. It wasn't an accurate depiction of what they were trying to do, and also kind of used some like fear-mongering language in it as well. Yeah,
they said it was kind of misdirecting or misrepresenting what they were trying to do, correct?
Correct. And I talked to Luke Mayville, who, was one of the co-founders of Reclaim Idaho, and so Reclaim Idaho is part of Idahoans for Open Primaries. I talked to him this week, and they'll have an article talking to him about kind of where the initiative process is right now in the Hey Boise newsletter next week. But he told me, like, we're expecting to have to run into a lot more hurdles throughout this initiative process. So the actual deadline for turning in these signatures is May 1st. So it's good for them that they have essentially, within a week they'll have what's required, right? You would expect. And so good for them that they are already working on that, because then they have, about 5 weeks or so to turn in the actual signatures, get all of those approved, make sure that everything's validated before they have to kind of, go through whatever is going to happen through the summer and the fall. Because if this gets approved and if this gets all the signatures required, this should be going on the ballot in November in the general election. And so this is actually coming up pretty quickly. And so they're a little bit anxious. They're a little bit concerned of looking at, what Raul Labrador is going to do, how he's going to want to weigh in. And also there are other parties involved, big proponents of this kind of change that they expect. He just said, we expect to see kind of everything thrown at us, really.
Well, even in the legislature, there have been proposed bills to try to change how this process works or make it easier to challenge signatures or throw them out without people even knowing that their signature has been rejected. So I can only imagine after the deadline, after the signatures are submitted, that they are going to face some pretty intense scrutiny.
I would expect so too. And yeah, like you said, there's a new bill right now that would like move the deadline for getting these signatures up to March 1st. So taking off essentially 2 months' time. And like the Idahoans for Open Primaries ballot initiative drive, it has been so far, I mean, we're talking about this in mid-March, it's been vastly successful. However, if that deadline was on March 1st, they wouldn't have met it. I mean, I'm sure that they would have worked harder earlier to get all of those signatures. So maybe they would have met that deadline. But still, I mean, it's what is considered a huge political success. It's just moving the goalposts. And that's only one of the elements of that bill that you mentioned. And there's another bill back in 2021 that the Idaho Supreme Court already shot down and said, ballot initiatives are a pretty important, like, fundamental right of the people in the state of Idaho, and we're not going to do anything to like overly get rid of that or complicate that in an unnecessary and unconstitutional way. So, yeah, the ballot initiative process is going to be a big conversation that we have, but that we keep having. But again, the point of this ballot initiative is actually to kind of get more voters involved and get more independents involved, which could reduce extremism. So then maybe challenges to such ballot initiatives would become a little bit harder to do legislatively. So we'll see what happens. This is going to be a big story that we keep talking about for a long time, for sure.
I was going to say, I think this will keep being an important conversation to have, whichever way it goes, because this is always something that getting voters involved, who is voting, how much access people have to elections and to feeling like their vote and their voice can be heard is something that I feel like there's constantly kind of a push on in this state. And so I think there's going to be a lot of conversations about this. And you said that you talked to Luke Mayville. Did he say that there have been any issues they faced when they're presenting this issue to voters? Yeah,
that's a good question. I asked him, like what are the selling points that people are like, ooh, I like that, and what are kind of the sticking points? And he essentially said like there aren't necessarily like sticking points, but ranked choice voting is just kind of so antithetical to on the surface. It seems very antithetical to the way that we have. Everyone who grew up in the States, like we have a very simple like system for voting. It's just like you see the name that you want and you fill out the box next to them.
Yeah.
But I mean, he said, and like I've talked to so many people, I mean, I explained this to my grandma and she was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I was like, okay, perfect. Like he was saying essentially like you have a 2-minute conversation with someone about what ranked choice voting is, which is just one of the elements of this ballot initiative. And it helps people clear up their understanding of it. But he said that the other side of things is that a lot of people have said like, oh, this would actually mean that I would vote again. So a lot of people have just sat out of primary elections just because they're like, I don't necessarily align with either a Republican or Democratic Party, or I'm a Democrat, but I feel like I don't have much power, or, even a Republican who's like, I just don't have much mitigation control of how far right the party's going to go.
Oh, absolutely.
And so there's a lot of people who they've talked to who are just like, oh, I could actually start being engaged in the political process in Idaho again. So, which... Again, I don't know. I mean, kind of on the surface, any politician who's not down for that is that's very telling. It's very telling to me of what they want from the political process, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I could talk all day
I know,
about
me too.
how I feel about closed primaries and what that does in a state where we have a dominant political party. And I actually helped collect signatures for this initiative before I was employed here. And people are very open to the idea. Number one, love the idea of open primaries. I found across the political spectrum, everyone likes the idea of being able to vote for who they think the best candidate is.
Right.
Like that really, it should be that simple. Who do you think is the best candidate? You should be able to vote for them.
Yeah.
And people love that and are then, I've found, outraged when they realize they can't in this state necessarily unless they're registered to a very specific party. But even talking about ranked choice voting, I always start by telling people, if you can count to 4, it's that simple.
You're good. Yeah.
It's really that simple. And I know a lot of the messaging has been that it's so complicated, you can't do that, which I think is condescending and talking down to voters and to people. And you're really diminishing the intelligence of people who are voting for elected officials in this state, which is an interesting choice for people to talk down and condescend to the people that they want to vote for them. But again, if you've ever picked out lunch for the office, you can do ranked choice voting. It really is that simple. Pick your top choice, pick your second choice, pick your third choice. And if people don't want what your first choice is, do you still want to have a say in what you have for lunch? Then it's that easy. Then they're going to go with your second choice. It's what everyone in the office wanted. The majority of people wanted. You got your second choice. So you're still happy. You still got something you wanted. It really is just that simple. So from talking to people, once you explain it, once you break it down in a way that's very easy for them, they see it's very simple. They're going to be more satisfied with elections. They're going to see more people elected who they feel actually represent them, as opposed to really fringe people who, get dark out of state money and, are able to be in these closed primaries. So they get this instant support, and then we get to the general, there's no one else to really vote for. So yeah, I'm really excited about this. I'm excited to see where this goes, and I'm really excited to see how the people of Idaho feel about this if it makes it onto the ballot in November.
Obviously, we're going to be everybody strap in. This general election, this presidential election is going to be, it's already tough. It's going to be a really bad one. However, as most any journalist or anyone who works in local politics will tell you, if you want to have an impact at the ballot box, you have to be voting all the way down the ballot. You have to be voting on your local offices. And this one in particular, if this ballot initiative gets on, this seems like kind of one of the most important things that Idahoans could have had on their ballots for a long time, honestly. I mean, this is definitely more important than one singular candidate for any office. So,
absolutely.
I'm excited to see what happens with this. And we'll kind of try to stay tuned as far as what hurdles are thrown at the Idahoans for open primaries. Because they said that they're expecting that.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure when I was at Treefort yesterday, I'm pretty sure I saw they have a booth. And so they're collecting signatures. So if you're at Treefort and you happen to see them and you have questions or you want more information, they are absolute experts and can get you all the information that you need.
They're going to be stoked to talk to you.
Okay, Blake, I wanted to jump into a segment that I've started calling Top Picks. And this can be absolutely anything. Your top pick, it's not restricted. It doesn't have to be political. It can be, a story about pet adoption or, gardening, or just really anything that you saw this week that really excited you, or you were happy to see it, or you felt like it was just some really great news for this area. So, Blake, what is your top pick this week?
Ooh, I mean, I'm just going to kind of continue with Treefort. There are a few specific events that I still want to go to. One that I'm actually really excited about is this podcast that's coming to town. So they're a James Beard Award-winning podcast, and they talk all about food, and they talk about restaurant culture. And that is so interesting to me. And I love the culture of food, or kind of the cultural dynamics behind food, I guess. And so they're coming to Boise and they're talking all about Boise's restaurant culture and restaurant scene. And so I'm really excited for that. I mean, I understand that live podcasts aren't for everyone, but I love it. So I'm really excited for that. And then, just a lot more Treefort stuff. I feel like my approach, because like we said earlier, I had such a great time early in the festival that now my goal is to try to get as a diverse a range of genres and events and venues as possible. I just kind of want a little grab bag of everything right now. So just trying to have fun this weekend. Not go too crazy, just kind of coast around and get little bites of everything. So that's my pick. What about you?
Okay, so I think my top pick, one of them I got from the Hey Boise newsletter. And it's also food-based. It's that new restaurant is opening up in the Shrine Social Club.
Yeah.
For Treefort. And so it's operated by the City of Good. And that's a nonprofit that provides meals for children, seniors, refugees, veterans that are experiencing food insecurity in our area. And so I was really excited during Treefort. I'm going to hit that up, try it out, see how it is. I'm planning on seeing potentially a couple of shows there. So I really want to try that out. I'm glad there'll be some food options while I'm there. Yeah. And then after a couple days of Treefort now, I'm really excited heading into the weekend. I think we'll see how this goes, but I'm kind of abandoning my plan a little bit. And I'm just going to kind of go where the mood takes me. I've had a little bit of fun kind of just wandering to different venues and finding new things. And so I'm kind of I'm embracing that wandering spirit, I guess. This is unusual for me. I'm usually like a girl with a plan. I stick to the plan. I love the plan. Yeah. And I guess the spirit of Treefort, I'm like, hey, I'm just going to kind of let that go and let's just see where I end up. So
yeah. That's so exciting for your first Treefort that like you're already vibing on that level. Like that's so exciting.
Yeah, it was really, we'll see where I end up. Yeah. I'm just wandering, guys. if I look lost, I'm just wandering. I'm not all who wander are lost.
That's right. Especially at Treefort, I feel like. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks so much, Blake. I hope you have a great weekend, great rest of your Treefort. And I hope everyone else who's doing Treefort has a great time. And I'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, sounds good. Stay hydrated, everyone.
That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. The show is produced by Evelyn Avitia, Frankie Barnhill, and Dylan Brogan. Blake Hunter writes our Hey Boise newsletter, and our music is by Up Is the Down Is The. If you enjoyed our show today, leave us a review. It helps other people find us. We'll be back on Monday with more stories from around the city. See you then.